In the world of e-commerce, having a remote team to assist in the day-to-day operations of your company is extremely common, and in today's video, I'm going to share with you our exact strategy for managing our remote team so that you can do the same in your business and achieve the lifestyle that you set out to build when you originally started your company. Hey, it's Trent from brightideas.co, where we help e-commerce entrepreneurs to launch and grow an e-commerce business from $0 to $5 million a year. If this is your first time here, be sure to hit the subscribe button, and all of the links that I mentioned in this video will be found down in the description below. So in order to build a successful remote team, there are 5 key things that you want to get right, or 5 mistakes that you want to avoid. So let's dive into each one of those and talk about the importance and how to get it right. So number 1 is not having documented systems in your business. This one is by far the most important. If you don't have documented systems, building a remote team and effectively getting them to do all the work that you need them to do in the way that you want it done will be substantially more difficult than it would be if you had documented systems. As an example of this, when I started my e-commerce business, the very first thing that I did when I was setting out to source products to resell on the Amazon marketplace is I knew that that was going to be a very laborious process. And I knew that I didn't really want to have to do most of that work more than 1 or 2 times so that I can understand how to do it. So what I did was I sat out and I thought, well, I'm going to do these things a couple of times, but I created a documented system as I was doing that thing. And that made it extremely easy for me to be able to then go out and hire virtual assistants and simply assign them to those documented systems and say, follow the checklist. And it worked out extremely well. Initially, when I created these systems, I used a very simple approach. I simply would put them in Google Docs, and as I was doing the thing, whatever that was, I was documenting the thing that I was doing, and that way I ideally never had to do that thing again. Now, over time, as the number of workflows, as I like to call them, increased and the number of virtual assistants that we had on our team increased, we very quickly ran up against some problems with the Google Docs approach, in that we didn't have an effective way to be able to assign those tasks to other people, to give them deadlines, to have correspondence back and forth if the VA had questions about those tasks. And so we evolved and eventually built our own software application, which is now publicly available, and you can get to it at Flowster.app, and it is a platform designed specifically for creating standard operating procedures. Number 2, not having a project management system in place. As I just mentioned previously, when you are relying on just Google Docs, there are going to be some problems that crop up as the volume of activity increases. So it's incredibly important that you have, whether it be Flowster or some other type of project management system in place. And the reason for that is very simple. So let's use an example. Let's say that you have a standard operating procedure for running product extraction on a competitive seller's storefront on Amazon, which for people who are in the same type of business as me is a very common thing. You're going to be doing that process over and over and over and over again. And so if you don't have a good project management system in place, what will happen is you'll lose track of what's going on and when it's due and who's doing what. And because you have a remote team, you're not going to be able to just look around the corner and say, hey, what's the status of so-and-so? That's not really going to work. So by having a proper project management system in place, you can say for the first 3 extractions, assign them to one particular person, and then the next 3 you can assign them to another person, and so forth. And then you can give due dates on each one of those tasks, and you and the person you've assigned it to will get email notifications of those due dates. If you're using Flowster, and most of the other applications work pretty much the same as this, you'll be able to log in and you'll see a dashboard, and you'll be able to see what's on track, what's behind track, and so forth. And so it's absolutely critical that you be able to assign those deadlines, that you be able to assign the tasks, and that you be able to have a conversation going back and forth about that particular task in one place. Because if you're trying to manage, say, 3 VAs and 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or 10 workflows, and you're trying to do it all in email, it becomes a huge jumbled mess in no time. Number 3, not measuring productivity. So one of the mistakes that I made early on was I delegated myself. This wasn't a mistake, this was a good part. I delegated myself out of the business by creating a system and then hiring somebody to replace me. That was an excellent decision. And that individual proceeded to generate really great results for 8 consecutive quarters. And I kind of got lazy when it comes to managing or at least keeping an eye on what that individual was doing on a daily and weekly basis. In other words, I wasn't keeping track of his productivity. And what happened is over time, he started to get bored or lose interest, or something happened that caused his productivity to start to go down. And because there's a time lag between the input of a task, in other words, the actions that he was taking, and the results of those actions, it can oftentimes be a month or a month and a half in between. By the time I noticed that the results were starting to go down and they were going down on a sustained basis, this problem had been happening for weeks and weeks and weeks, actually almost 2 months. And so that was a huge failure on my part. And had I been monitoring his productivity more closely with a tool like Hubstaff, for example, I would have been able to catch that much quicker. So for your VA team, Hubstaff is a fantastic tool because it will take periodic screenshots. It will essentially keep track of how effectively they're using their time, so that if you have 3 or 4 VAs and they're all doing the same thing, if one of them starts to generate results or starts to underperform the other ones, you will be able to catch it much quicker. Number 4, not having regular staff meetings. When you have a remote team, it is absolutely critical that you meet each and every week. I would encourage that you do these meetings on something like Zoom, where you can actually all see each other on the screen. Now that's very important for just human connections, but also it is the importance of the meetings for you to be able to check in with your team and have conversations like, how are you doing with this? How are you doing with this system? Are there challenges that you're running into? Are there questions that you have? And then you also are affording your team the opportunity to collaborate with one another, get to know one another better, because everybody's working in a different place. So that face-to-face interaction every single week, where unscripted conversations can happen, becomes very, very important. Number 5, not having a constantly available chat room. So in our case, we use Slack. And the thing that we use Slack for is one for when we need a piece of information really, really quickly. So in our organization, if I need something from you tomorrow, I'm not going to Slack you. I'm going to send you an email because I don't want to interrupt you from whatever it is that you're doing. But if there is a piece of information or an answer or whatever that I need in the next 5 minutes in order to be able to continue working on what I'm working on, or maybe I've got a phone call with a supplier and that phone call is 10 minutes away, that's going to be when I'm going to use Slack. The other thing that Slack is really, really good for is humor. So it gives us an opportunity to share jokes, share animated GIFs. It's kind of like the talk around the water cooler, and because you're not all in one place, it is a fantastic way to be able to do that. Obviously, you want to keep it kind of under control so it doesn't become this huge unwieldy beast and take over and everyone's just slacking and goofing around all day, every day. But it is a very necessary part of kind of creating that gel within a team. So make sure that you have a place for that instant conversation, and also make sure that everyone on your team understands that it's only for the highest priority, time-sensitive activities. Thanks very much for watching my video. If you have questions about it, please make sure you scroll down to the comments and go ahead and leave your question down there, and I'll do my very best to get you an answer. If you haven't already subscribed and you'd like to see future videos, make sure that you go ahead and do that. And in addition, if you would like more information about how to start your business selling brand name products on Amazon, I have a webinar that I do for that. And you can see a link to that webinar right down in the description. And in that webinar, I go into a whole lot more detail on how we use all of these systems to be able to go out and be able to essentially reach out to the number of brands that we've been able to reach out to in the time that we have. So it's a very systematic approach to growth. So if that's how your brain is wired, you're going to absolutely love what I share on that webinar. And I look forward to seeing you there. Thanks very much for tuning in. Have a great day.